There is a boy standing at the edge of everything. He is 14 years old. He does not have a weapon or a plan or any particular knowledge of how the cosmos works. He has a yellow shirt and blue jeans and a small voice that breaks when he is scared, which is most of the time. He is standing at the threshold of a portal that opens into a dimension he has never visited, and his hands are shaking, and somewhere behind him in the glow of an overcrowded garage, his grandfather is already walking through and not looking back to see if Morty is following. Morty always follows. That single image, this trembling, ordinary 14-year-old following the most dangerous man in the universe into the completely unknown, is what Rick and Morty is built on. And if you have been watching this show from the beginning, wow, from that very first episode back in December 2013 right through to where the story sits now in its 8th season and beyond, you already understand on some level that what this show has been doing, quietly and steadily, and sometimes brutally, is mapping the inner life of a kid who started as the universe's most anxious passenger, and slowly, painfully, and without a clean narrative arc, became someone else entirely. Today we are going to trace that journey from the beginning. Not just the plot, not just what happened and when, but the interior of it, the texture of what it was like to be Morty and Smith moving through these seasons, accumulating damage and resilience in roughly equal measure, losing things that cannot be recovered, and finding things he did not know he was looking for. This is going to take some time. Morty's story deserves time. He has been carrying a lot. Let me walk you through it. Section 1. Who is Morty Smith and where does he come from? Before we get into any single episode, before the adventures and the catastrophes and the hard-won moments of growth, we need to understand who Morty actually is when we first meet him. Not the broad strokes, the specific, granular, human details of who this kid is, where his anxiety comes from, what he wants from his life, and why he becomes the show's emotional center in a way that Rick, for all his brilliance, never quite can. Morty Smith, full name Mortimer Chauncey Smith, was born February 6, 1999, to Jerry and Beth Smith in what the show will eventually identify as the Prime Dimension. He lives in a suburb that functions as the show's version of Anytown, USA, comfortable enough? Ordinary enough. The kind of place designed to produce people who never do anything particularly memorable. He has a sister, Summer, who is 17 to his 14, and who occupies the social strata of a high school girl who knows exactly how that ecosystem works and has learned to navigate it with a cool pragmatism that Morty completely lacks. His parents are, in the most sympathetic possible reading, complicated. Beth Smith is intelligent, driven, and quietly burning with a resentment she cannot always name. She is a horse surgeon, which she does well, but she has always felt she was meant for more. She could have been a people surgeon. She could have been remarkable in the traditional prestigious sense. But she got pregnant with Summer at 17 and married Jerry and built a life that always felt like a compromise. She loves her children fiercely, in a distracted, occasionally absent way that reveals itself most clearly when she is pushed. She is also deeply, foundationally shaped by her relationship with her own father, Rick, which we will return to at length. Jerry Smith is a good man in the most technically accurate and contextually limited sense of the phrase. He works hard. He means well. He is not cruel. He is also profoundly insecure, easily manipulated, and so desperate for approval from everyone around him, from Beth, from Rick, from random strangers who would never remember him 2 minutes after meeting him, that it colors every interaction he has with his family. He loves Morty, truly, but he often expresses that love through anxiety, through hovering, through making Morty's presence in any given situation about Jerry's own need to be seen as a competent parent. Neither of these parents are bad people. They are just people for whom Morty's particular needs, his specific anxieties, his tendency to withdraw and second-guess himself, are difficult to attend to when they are each so consumed by their own needs. There are no villains in the Smith household. There is just a persistent absence of the specific, patient, undivided attention that a kid like Morty would need to feel genuinely secure. And into this already complicated domestic picture moves Rick. Rick Sanchez is Morty's maternal grandfather. He is also, by every available measure, the most dangerous, capable, and intellectually extraordinary being in the accessible multiverse. But he can build a portal gun that tears holes between dimensions with the casual confidence of someone assembling furniture. He has created life forms, destroyed civilizations, invented technologies that entire interstellar empires have not yet conceptualized, and then gone home to watch interdimensional cable and drink from a flask he keeps in his lab coat. He is a genius of a scale that the word genius genuinely undersells. He is also, in ways the show reveals slowly and painfully, one of the most emotionally damaged people in any dimension of the multiverse. His wife Diane is dead. His original daughter, his real Beth, is dead, killed when she was a child. He spent decades hunting the Rick who was responsible for those deaths, driven by a grief so enormous that it warped everything around it, and including his capacity to be present for anyone new. He drinks because it quiets something. He pushes people away because losing them later would be unbearable. He takes Morty on adventures partly because he needs Morty's brainwaves as cover, and partly, the show will reveal, because Morty fills a space in his life that has been empty for a very long time. Morty does not know any of this at the start of the show. He knows Rick is brilliant and strange and drinks too much, and sometimes does things that are frightening. He knows that being around Rick means missing school and being pulled into impossible situations and ending up in dimensions where the laws of physics do not apply. He knows all of this, and he still wants to be close to Rick. He still lights up when Rick says something that sounds like affection, even when it is surrounded by condescension. He still follows him through the portals. It is important to understand why, and it goes deeper than just a child loving a grandparent. Morty has been struggling in his life, quietly and without visible support, for a long time before we meet him. He is behind in school. Not dramatically behind, not in a way anyone has flagged as a crisis, but his math class in Season 1 is doing problems that feel like they belong, years below his grade level. And the show plays this as a joke, but it is not a joke. It is a portrait of a kid who fell behind somewhere and nobody caught it. He is socially awkward in a specific, painful way. Not weird enough to have found a community of other weird kids, just uncertain enough that the ordinary machinery of high school social life keeps not working for him. He cannot talk to girls. He cannot make himself visible in the way that gets you invited to parties or remembered on Monday morning. And then this wild, terrifying, brilliant old man shows up in the garage and says, essentially, come with me. I need you. The adventures are dangerous, but I need you specifically to come along. And for a kid who has spent his whole life feeling like a marginal figure in every room he has ever been in, even in his own home, being told you are needed is intoxicating in a way that is very hard to say no to. Now, here is the thing about Morty that the show will spend years unpacking. The thing that makes him interesting rather than just pathetic. He is not simply naive. He is not simply a victim of Rick's manipulation. He is also genuinely, meaningfully good. In a show full of characters who are smart, or powerful, or funny, or complicated, Morty's particular gift is that he cares. He cares about strangers, he cares about fairness. He cares about whether the people around him are okay. He has what the show will later identify as a moral compass that is not sophisticated. Exactly, but that is consistently pointing in the right direction even when the terrain around it is chaotic. This combination, desperate need for validation, plus genuine goodness, plus enormous anxiety, is what makes him the perfect companion for Rick and the perfect lens through which to experience this show. He is not above any of it. He is not protected by genius or power or emotional invulnerability. He is just there in it, feeling everything, surviving through some combination of luck and love and the specific stubbornness of a person who has decided, well, perhaps without fully meaning to, that caring about things is non-negotiable. One thing is crucial to establish before we move forward because it matters enormously in ways we will only fully understand when we arrive at Season 6. Morty, for years, believes himself to be Morty C-137, named after the dimension designation his grandfather uses. This turns out to be wrong in a way that reshapes the show's foundations entirely. But for now, what matters is the identity he is building, episode by episode, in a world he thinks he understands but does not yet know the full shape of. The character of Morty was originally loosely modeled on Marty McFly from Back to the Future, which is where the show itself originated as a short film parody. And like Marty McFly, early Morty is designed to be the relatable human anchor in a story that would otherwise be too strange to connect with emotionally. He is the audience's entry point, the person we live through, the one who asks the questions we would ask and flinches at the things we would flinch at. But Marty McFly never fundamentally changes. He has adventures. He grows up a little. The world changes around him, but Marty stays largely the same. Rick and Morty made a different choice with Smith. He was not going to stay the same. The show was going to find out what this particular kind of person becomes when subjected to this particular kind of life. And what he becomes is genuinely, movingly, sometimes disturbingly surprising. Section 2. The Pilot and the Earliest Lessons. The very first scene of Rick and Morty is designed to tell you something important, and it is easy to miss what it is telling you the first time you see it, because the show moves so fast and the comedy is loud and distracting in the best possible way. Rick comes into Morty's room in the middle of the night, clearly drunk, carrying what appears to be a bomb. He tells Morty he loves him more than anyone in the world, and that if he is going to end it all, he wants to do it with the person he loves most. He grabs Morty. They go to the garage. Rick sits them both inside what looks like a homemade aircraft and begins to monologue about how he is going to take Morty to a place where all of their problems will disappear. Morty, completely terrified, stumbles along. That he follows because he loves Rick. He follows because Rick is his grandfather. He follows because saying no to Rick is not really something that has been established as an option yet. He follows even though he is square Nate, and even though the situation is objectively alarming, and even though any reasonable outside observer would tell him this is not a normal way to treat a child. And then Rick laughs. It was a joke. Not an ending, an adventure. They are going to a seed world to collect megafruit seeds that will solve world hunger. That was the plan all along. Rick just thought it was funny to frame it as a suicide trip first. Everything about Morty and Rick's dynamic exists in that opening scene. Rick uses Morty's love as a mechanism. Not cruelly, not with any particular malice of intent, but as a tool. As the thing he knows will work when he needs Morty to comply. He knows that Morty will follow him anywhere because Morty loves him. He knows this, uses this, and does not spend a single moment examining whether that is a healthy dynamic. Because Rick does not spend a lot of time examining whether anything he does is healthy, and Morty follows, because he loves Rick. Because love for Morty is not conditional, even when it probably should be. This is the thread that runs through every single season of this show, from the pilot all the way through the most recent episodes. Morty's love for Rick is the most enduring, most consistent, most defining feature of his character. Not his anxiety, not his bravery, not his gradually developing capabilities. The love. It predates all of it, and it outlasts everything that tries to erode it. The pilot adventure itself is relatively simple by later standards. They go to a seed world. Rick gives Morty a series of devices and tells him not to press certain buttons. Morty presses the wrong button, falls through a portal, breaks both his legs, and the rest of the episode is them navigating interdimensional customs with the seeds hidden inside Morty's rectum. It is chaotic and funny and occasionally disgusting, and it establishes the template for Rick and Morty's basic adventure structure. Rick is smart and adaptable. Morty is terrified and improvising. Things go wrong, they survive. Nobody learns anything comfortable, but the details of the adventure matter less than the emotional architecture the pilot is establishing. Pay attention to what Morty does and does not say when they get home. He does not tell Rick off. That he does not demand an apology. He does not say that this was traumatizing and he is not going to do this again. He says with the weary flatness of someone who has already accepted that this is how things are, that Rick will need to explain to his parents why he missed school. And then they move on. This is Morty already in the mode that will define him for years. Absorbing, accepting, moving forward. Not because he is fine, not because the experiences are not affecting him, but because the alternative, which is to push back hard enough that it changes anything, is not something he knows how to access yet. Season 1 gives us a series of adventures that, viewed together, paint a picture of exactly how systematically the show is introducing Morty to things no teenager should have to process. In Lawnmower Dog, how Rick enters Morty's math teacher's dreams to manipulate his subconscious into giving Morty better grades. Morty assists with this, essentially participating in the psychological violation of a person in a position of authority over him. In Anatomy Park, Morty is shrunk down and sent inside a human body to navigate the internal organs as if they are a theme park, encountering diseases and parasites in visceral, unforgettable ways. In M. Night Shyamalan's, Morty is briefly trapped inside a simulation designed to extract Rick's formula for concentrated dark matter, and spends most of the episode not knowing what is real. Episode by episode, the foundations of ordinary reality are being dissolved around Morty. Not in a dramatic way. Not with a big moment where the show tells you that this is the important thing that is happening. Just quietly, consistently, in the background of whatever adventure is going on. By the time you reach the end of Season 1, Morty has stopped being startled by impossible things. He still gets scared, but startled, no. He has seen too much to be startled. Me Seeks and Destroy, Season 1, Episode 5, is an early turning point that deserves much more attention than it usually gets in discussions of the show's mythology. On the surface, it is the episode where Morty gets to lead his own adventure, where Rick gives him the chance to pick their destination for once. The Me-Seek subplot at home is funny and spiraling, and everything the show does well with absurdist escalation. But the main adventure does something quietly devastating. Morty chooses a fantasy adventure, a gentle, medieval-style world with giants and magic and quests. But he is trying to choose something that feels safe and manageable, something that might, for once, feel like a normal adventure story rather than a nightmare. They help a village. They climb a beanstalk. A giant accidentally dies, and they end up on trial for murder. Things are already going wrong, but the stakes still feel bounded, still feel like something that might resolve neatly. And then Morty goes to the bathroom at a tavern, and King Jellybean, the ruler of the village, follows him in. And he assaults Morty. He tries to rape him. Morty fights him off. He uses a toilet seat to defend himself. He gets out. He comes back to where Rick is playing cards, visibly shaking, barely able to form words. He tells Rick the adventure is over. He does not want to win the bet. He does not want his adventure privileges. He just wants to go home. Rick, who reads situations better when it matters than the show usually lets him, agrees immediately. No argument, no negotiation. They go home. And then, quietly, as Morty is stepping through the portal, Rick turns back. He looks at the King Jellybean, who has returned to his throne room in the village, still visibly beaten up from Morty's defense of himself. And Rick shoots him, through the portal, without a word, without ceremony. That moment is Rick at his most genuinely caring, expressed entirely in the language Rick knows how to use, which is action without sentiment. He does not hug Morty. He does not ask if he is okay. He does not have a conversation about what happened. He just makes sure that the thing that hurt his grandson cannot hurt anyone else. And then he keeps walking like he is not the kind of person who does things like that. This is the blueprint for how Rick's love for Morty works throughout the show. It is real. It is powerful. It expresses itself in protection rather than in tenderness. It is surrounded by behavior that is careless and sometimes genuinely harmful. But it is there, underneath all of it, consistent and ferocious in the specific moments when it reveals itself. For Morty, this moment is also important because it is the first clear demonstration that Rick does see him. Not just as a cloaking device, not just as a sidekick who makes good adventure material. He sees him specifically enough to know, without being told, what happened in that bathroom. He sees him well enough to respond to it in exactly the way that protects Morty's dignity, quietly, much without making a spectacle of what happened, while still making absolutely certain it is addressed. Morty does not fully articulate this. He does not turn to Rick and thank him or acknowledge the gift of what just happened. But he holds it somewhere. He carries it the way you carry proof that someone loves you even when they are bad at showing it. Close Rick counters of the Rick kind at the end of Season 1 introduces the Citadel of Ricks and the concept of the multiverse of Mortis, and it does something interesting to Morty's self-concept. He encounters other Mortys, many of them. and they are, almost without exception, timid and submissive and defined entirely by their relationship to their Rick. They exist as accessories, as tools, as cloaking devices in the most literal possible sense, barely having personalities beyond their function. Rick tells Morty that among all the Mortys, he is the Mortiest Morty, which sounds like an insult and is also somehow a compliment. The most Morty of all Mortys, the most anxious, the most easily distressed, the most thoroughly representative of whatever Mortiness is at its purest. But also, paradoxically, the most developed, the most himself. In a sea of Mortys who are barely more than props in their Rick's life, this Morty has become, through all the adventures and all the damage and all the care and the love and the terror, something that resembles a full person. He does not fully recognize this yet, but the seed of it is there, planted in the same soil as everything else about him. Waiting. Season 1 ends with Ricksy business, which sees Rick throw a massive interdimensional party at the Smith house. Things spiral. An interdimensional warlord shows up, and Bird Person appears and gives Morty a piece of advice that will mean more to him later than he can possibly know in the moment. He tells him that in their language, Rick's catchphrase that everyone has heard but maybe not thought about translates roughly as "I am in great pain. Please help me." And Morty, hearing this, looks at his grandfather across a crowded party full of alien life and sees him differently, maybe for the first time, not as a wild genius having fun, but as a man in pain who has found this particular way of asking for help without actually asking. Section 3. The Love Potion. Catastrophe, the world. Morty was born in is gone. If there is a single episode in Season 1 that permanently alters the shape of Morty's story, it is Rick Potion number 9. And it deserves extended attention because what happens in it is not just plot. It is the foundational trauma around which everything else in Morty's journey is organized. The setup is simple and completely understandable. Morty has a crush on Jessica, his classmate. There's a school dance coming up. Morty, in the grip of that specific kind of teenage desperation, where the usual rules of good judgment simply stop applying, asks Rick for help. Could Rick make a love potion? Something that would make Jessica want to spend time with him at the dance? It sounds small. It sounds harmless. It sounds like the kind of request a 14-year-old makes all the time. Rick makes the potion. He hands it over with the careless ease of someone for whom this is barely a thought. Morty applies it to himself. Jessica, as fate would have it, has the flu that day. The love potion mutates with the flu virus and becomes airborne. It spreads to the entire school. And then, carried on the exhaled breath of 1,000 infected students, it moves out into the town, and then into the world. Within the span of one episode, everyone on Earth not biologically related to Morty is obsessively, dangerously in love with him. This is alarming enough. But then Rick tries to fix it. He adds a praying mantis genome to counteract the lovesick behavior. The population mutates. They become Cronenberg monsters, grotesque, distorted body horror creatures that look like something from a nightmare. He tries again. More genomic cocktails. More mutations. Layer after layer of failed solutions piling up on each other until the Earth that Morty has known for his entire life has become something completely unrecognizable. And Rick, with a directness that is either admirable or horrifying depending on how you are feeling about him in that moment, says simply that it cannot be fixed. Not in this dimension. The damage is permanent. The Earth they know is gone. So they leave. Rick opens a portal to a dimension where another version of himself and another version of Morty just happened to die in a lab accident hours earlier. That dimension's Earth is fine. The crisis was averted there. The people who live there, as including that dimension's versions of Beth and Jerry and Summer, do not know their Rick and Morty just died. Rick's plan is to go there, bury the dead bodies of their alternate selves in the backyard, and take over those lives. And that is what they do. Morty, standing in the backyard of a house that looks exactly like his house, but is not his house, digs a hole. He lowers the dead body of the Morty who belonged in this dimension into the ground. He looks at the face of this dead boy, a face that is his own face, and puts soil over it. He buries himself in the dirt of a dimension that was never his. And then he walks back inside a house where his mother and father and sister do not know they are looking at a replacement. A refugee Morty who destroyed their original world and has come here to live their life instead. On the last scene of the episode is the one people always remember. Morty is sitting on the couch staring at nothing, looking hollowed out in a way that is not comedic at all. His sister Summer, who watched some of what happened, asks him how Rick lives with himself. How does he just keep going after something like that? And Morty gives her the answer that has become one of the show's most quoted, most analyzed speeches. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody is going to die. Come watch TV. Take that in for a moment. This is a 14-year-old boy who just lost his entire world, who just buried his own dead body in a stranger's backyard, who just relocated to a life that does not belong to him, speaking to his sister in the flat, accepting tone of someone who has decided that the only way to keep moving is to detach. And the answer he offers is Rick's answer, the nihilist answer, the nothing matters, so nothing has to hurt answer. It is not genuinely fine. Morty is not genuinely fine. Nothing about that scene is fine. But Morty has started the process of becoming the kind of person who can keep functioning in conditions that would shut other people down. And part of that process involves adopting Rick's philosophical framing as a coping mechanism. If nothing matters cosmically, then losing your world is just another event. You file it and keep moving. This is the most dangerous thing Rick has ever done to Morty, and it did not involve a portal gun or an alien enemy. It involved a way of seeing the world, a way of metabolizing loss that Morty adopted because it was the only available tool in the moment, and because the man he loved most provided it. But the physical reality of what this episode establishes also matters enormously for everything that follows. From this episode forward, the Morty we watch is living in a dimension he was not born in. His original Beth, his original Jerry, his original Summer are back in the Cronenberg dimension, struggling to survive in a world he destroyed. They are alive for a while. But they are living out a post-apocalyptic existence because of a mistake Morty made when he asked Rick for a love potion, and Rick made one carelessly, and neither of them thought through the implications. He will not find out what finally becomes of them until much later. And when he does, it is not gentle. The love potion disaster is also the single most powerful demonstration of what life with Rick actually costs. Rick made that potion without thinking. He did not weigh the risks. He did not plan for failure. He did not treat the situation with the care that a planet full of human beings probably warranted. And when it went catastrophically wrong, his response was not grief or remorse, but pragmatism. Find a working dimension. Move there. Keep going. Morty forgave this immediately. He did not even articulate it as forgiveness. He just accepted it and kept moving. Because that is what you do when the only alternative is to sit in the backyard next to your own grave and stay there forever. These things accumulate. The show will spend many seasons showing us precisely how they accumulate. Section 4. Season 2, and the boy who starts to see clearly. Season 2 of Rick and Morty arrives with the energy of a show that has found its footing and is no longer nervous about how dark it is willing to go. The premiere, A Wrinkle in Time, opens with the consequence of the Season 1 finale that most television would have quietly buried. Rick froze time during a party to avoid dealing with cleanup. Time has been fractured. Rick and the kids have been living in a bubble of non-linear possibility ever since. The episode is about repairing that, about collapsing the branching timelines back into a single thread of reality. Morty's role in this episode signals something new. He is not just the reactive figure, not just the person things happen to. He is problem-solving. He is trying to understand the mechanism of what is going wrong. When his timeline becomes further fragmented, and he is briefly facing death alone, he handles it with a steadiness that would not have been there in Season 1. He does not fully solve the problem. Rick ultimately saves the day. But Morty's approach to a crisis has shifted. He is observing, analyzing, trying to apply what he has learned. The adventures have been teaching him, even if what they are teaching him is not always comfortable. Morty Night Run is one of the most important moral episodes in the show's history for understanding Morty's ethical development. Rick has a client who wants a weapon delivered, and Morty discovers that the weapon Rick is transporting is actually a sentient being named Fart. who communicates through music and is capable of profound emotional expression. Morty, horrified, yet refuses to allow Rick to hand Fart over to be killed. He frees Fart himself. He spends the episode protecting this being at considerable personal risk because it is the right thing to do. And then Fart reveals his plan. He intends to eliminate all carbon-based life. He sees carbon-based consciousness as a lower evolutionary form, and his goal is to replace it with something purer. His plan would kill everyone Morty has ever loved, would kill Morty himself. And Morty makes the call. He takes the antimatter gun. He kills Fart. The scene is quiet and devastating in a way that is specific to Rick and Morty. Morty does not celebrate. He does not make a speech about the hard choice or the terrible necessity. He just does it, and the look on his face afterward is not relief. It is the look of someone learning that the world does not divide neatly into good and evil, that sometimes the thing worth protecting will turn out to be the thing that needs to be stopped, and that you do not get any credit for noticing the difference too late. Total Recall showcases a different kind of Morty intelligence, the emotional and perceptive intelligence that often gets overlooked because Rick's intellectual fireworks are so much louder. The Smith house is invaded by parasites that reproduce by implanting false memories. The more the family feels affection for a false memory, the more parasites can multiply. The house fills up with increasingly outlandish fake characters, all of whom feel completely real to the family because the memories around them feel real. And it is Morty who figures out how to identify the parasites. He realizes that the parasites can only create positive memories. They cannot create conflict, cannot create the minor frictions and disappointments and arguments that real relationships accumulate. The way to identify a real person from a fake one is to search your memory for something bad they did, something that hurt, something that reminded you they were a person with their own needs and flaws. This is beautiful in a way the comedy does not fully acknowledge. The parasites exploit a human weakness, the tendency to want to believe only in the good parts of the relationships we care about. And the antidote is the recognition that people you love will let you down sometimes. That love includes discomfort. That discomfort is actually proof of reality. Morty, who has every reason to idealize his relationships because he so desperately wants them to be simple and good, is the one who sees this clearly first. His emotional intelligence is operating at a level Rick cannot access. But the most significant episode of Season 2 for Morty's arc is autoerotic assimilation, which is ostensibly about Rick and his ex, Unity, a hive mind that has assimilated an entire planet. Morty is in the background of most of it, watching, processing, not quite understanding everything he is seeing. But what he witnesses has a slow, spreading effect. He watches Rick show up like a storm front in Unity's world. He watches the planet's civilization, which Unity has been working to improve and unify, begin to deteriorate the moment Rick arrives. He watches a race war erupt among the newly freed inhabitants, because Unity's control slips when it is distracted by Rick. He watches Rick's appetite for stimulation, his need to be the most interesting thing in any situation, pull someone who loved him off balance and into chaos. And Unity leaves. Not angrily. Sadly. The letter she leaves for Rick explains that she cannot be with him because being with him turns her into something she does not want to be. That Rick does this to everyone. That he is, paradoxically, better at assimilation than Unity, who at least changes people only externally. Rick changes what you value from the inside. And then, at the episode's end, Rick comes back to his underground lab and tries to kill himself. The attempt is quiet, clinical, almost casual. He assembles something, points it at himself, and it fizzles. He collapses onto the workbench. The camera holds on this for a long moment before pulling back. Morty does not see this happen, but the episode has shown him enough. He is assembling a picture of his grandfather that is darker and more complicated than the one he started with. He does not know what to do with this picture. He carries it the way you carry things when you do not have anywhere to put them yet. The Season 2 finale, The Wedding Squanchers, is a gut punch dressed up as a celebration. Rick's oldest friend Bird Person is getting married. The whole family attends. There is food and dancing and something that looks, for a moment, like genuine happiness. And then Tammy, Bird Person's new wife, reveals she is a Galactic Federation agent. Federation soldiers pour in from everywhere. Bird Person goes down. Squanchy transforms and throws himself into a fight so that Rick and the family can escape. Rick surrenders to the Federation so that his family can go free. For Morty, the specific weight of this episode is the reminder that nothing Rick builds is safe. Not friendships, not celebrations, not the rare moments of warmth. The universe is full of traps, and Rick's life is constructed so that traps can be set anywhere. The season ends with Rick in a prison cell, Morty's family on the run, the world under alien occupation. Everything Morty knew about stability has dissolved again. Section 5. The Year of Fire, Season 3 and the Erosion of Innocence. Season 3 opens with The Rick Shank Redemption, structured as a Rick showcase where he engineers an elaborate escape spanning dimensions and simulations and the obliteration of a global empire. But Morty's portion of this episode is worth your close attention. The opening act has him and Summer in the original Cronenberg dimension, the world Morty and Rick abandoned in Season 1. The original Smith family there has broken down. Months of surviving in a post-apocalyptic horror landscape have eroded them. They are paranoid. They have gone feral at the edges. When Morty and Summer arrive, the original Smith family captures them and treats them as threats. Morty, faced with a version of his own family that has gone wrong in ways he cannot fully articulate, is steady, not unaffected, but steady in a way that is functionally useful, in a way that gets them out alive. He problem solves. Yet he keeps Summer focused. He does not freeze. He has learned how to function in conditions where the worst possible thing is simply where you currently are. And in the episode's pivotal moment, when Summer is ready to give up on Rick, when Summer says they should just let him figure it out himself, Morty argues against this. He tells Summer that Rick always has a plan. He tells her that betting on Rick's plan to work is the most rational available strategy. He can love Rick and simultaneously understand exactly what Rick is and is not. This is a maturity that was not there in Season 1. He is no longer following Rick out of uncritical adoration. He is choosing to follow Rick with open eyes, which is a genuinely different thing. Season 3 deepens this through a series of episodes that collectively document the erosion of something he is losing one piece at a time. In Rick Mincing the Stone, the family channels grief over their parents' divorce into a Mad Max-style dimension, and Morty becomes a fighter. The ease with which he takes to it, the casual violence he adopts to process his emotional pain, is not a healthy sign. He is learning to put his feelings somewhere other than inside himself. He is learning to externalize, to act out rather than process. And the show watches this happen without commenting on it loudly, because this is how it actually happens in real people. Quietly, gradually, without a single moment where someone says this is where things went wrong. Vindicators 3 gives us Morty's disillusionment with heroes he once genuinely loved. The Vindicators are a superhero team Morty has real affection for. He has merchandise. He talks about them with enthusiasm that comes from somewhere true. The episode dismantles this affection efficiently. The Vindicators are vain, self-interested, and not nearly as capable as their public image suggests. But more important than Morty's disillusionment is his demonstrated competence. When Rick sets up an elaborate trap for the team while drunk, Morty solves the traps. He remembers enough about drunk Rick's thinking patterns to navigate situations that kill actual superheroes. He knows Rick well enough to predict how drunk Rick's mind works. This is not the Morty of Season 1 who broke his legs pressing the wrong button on a belt. And then there is Morty's mind blowers, which I want to spend real time with because it is one of the most important and the most overlooked episodes in the entire show. Rick has a secret room full of containers, each holding a memory he has extracted from Morty at Morty's request. These are memories Morty found so painful, so traumatizing, so unbearable to carry, that he asked Rick to take them away. And there are hundreds of them, years and years of experiences that Morty chose, actively and repeatedly chose to erase rather than to live with. The episode replays a selection of these mind-blowers for us. And what they show, beneath the comedy of each individual clip, is a portrait of accumulation. Not just the individual bad experiences, but the sheer quantity of them. The number of times Morty has looked at what has happened to him and decided the most viable option was to simply stop remembering it. He has been erasing himself. Brick by brick, he has been removing the architecture of his own experience because the alternative, which is to carry all of it, seemed impossible. This is not strength. It is a survival mechanism that looks like strength, but functions more like a slow disappearance. Every erased memory is a piece of Morty that no longer exists. Every time he pressed reset, he made himself a little smaller, a little less whole, a little less capable of the full span of experience that a person needs to be genuinely okay. And Rick helped him do this. Rick designed the system, which is, in a sense, a form of care. Rick is protecting Morty from pain he cannot handle. But it is also enabling a pattern of avoidance that compounds everything. The experiences Morty does not consciously remember did not fail to happen. They happened. They shaped him. The fact that he cannot access them does not mean they are not influencing how he responds to things, creating patterns of reaction that he cannot trace back to their origins because the origins have been filed away in a vault he cannot open. Season 3 also gives us Rest and Ricklaxation, where Rick and Morty visit an alien spa that separates them from their toxic personality traits. A separate Morty, a toxic Morty, is created containing all of Morty's self-doubt, his anxiety, his fear, his tendency to second-guess. What remains, healthy Morty, is confident and smooth and capable. He gets the girl. He gets the job. He functions effortlessly in every situation. And he is hollow. Completely, disturbingly hollow. Healthy Morty looks at Jessica and sees someone useful for appearances, not someone worth knowing. He works rooms and manages people and is as effective as a machine. And the show makes this point explicitly. The anxiety was not just a character flaw. These things were connected to something essential, to the empathy, to the care, to the moral hesitation that made Morty more than just another capable person doing capable things without feeling any of it. Rick and Morty, across seasons, has been doing to Morty what that alien spa does mechanically. And the show is honest enough to let you see that this process, while it makes Morty more functional in certain practical ways, also makes him less of himself. The price of capability, in this universe, is paid in tenderness, and Morty has been paying it, a little at a time, for 3 seasons. Section 6. Searching for Something Real. Season 4 and the Question of Identity. Season 4 arrives asking a question that prior seasons have been building toward without quite naming. Not what will happen to Morty, but who is Morty now? After everything. After the Cronenberg world and the Mind Blowers and the Purge and all the rest of it. Who has he become? Edge of To Morty Rick Die Rickpeat, the premiere, gives us a remarkable and disturbing test of this. Morty finds a death crystal on an alien planet. Death crystals let you see your own death. Not in a fixed way, but in a responsive one. If you keep looking into them and adjusting your behavior, you can follow one path toward a specific death rather than another. Morty looks into the crystal, and what he sees is himself, old, surrounded by warmth, with Jessica beside him as he dies. He sees a death in the context of love. He sees the ending he has been quietly hoping for since he was 14 and too anxious to ask Jessica to the school dance. An ordinary, human, beloved ending. Nothing cosmic, nothing heroic, just an old man dying with someone who loves him nearby. And this vision transforms Morty into something frightening. In pursuit of this specific future, he kills people. Military personnel, anyone who gets between him and the path the crystal is showing him. He does it with a mechanical intensity that has nothing to do with anger or hate, just with calculation. He has decided that this future is worth reaching, and he will do what is required. The Season 4 premiere is showing you the danger of Morty's remaining tenderness in the wrong context. His longing for something simple and good can be weaponized by anyone who knows it. The care becomes the vulnerability, and a crystal that shows him what he wants most and charges the price of getting there is just a more mechanically explicit version of what Rick has been doing across 4 seasons. The Vat of Acid episode later in Season 4 is even more pointed. Rick builds a device that functions as a video game save state, letting Morty undo choices and return to earlier moments. And Morty, given this power, does something real with it. He does not use it for adventures or for survival. He uses it to build a relationship. He meets a woman at a coffee shop, unnamed, and then falls in love with her over the course of what appears to be months or years of compressed time. The episode shows us in a beautiful, wordless montage. They fight, they make up, they survive a plane crash in the mountains and pull each other through by sheer force of love for each other. They come out the other side marked by what they survived together. And then Jerry accidentally triggers the save state. Morty is back at the coffee shop. The woman does not know him. He tries to recreate the first meeting. It goes wrong. The save state activates in the wrong direction and eliminates any path back to her entirely. It turns out this was Rick's lesson. He set the whole thing up to demonstrate to Morty the value of accepting consequences, of not wanting a device that lets you escape the weight of your choices. The lesson is real, and it has merit. Rick is not entirely wrong, but the delivery method is so calculated, so willing to use Morty's genuine love as teaching material, that the lesson lands alongside grief. Morty lost something real. He fell in love and then lost her because Rick decided it was a good teaching moment. Morty does not explode. He does not confront Rick with the full force of how awful that was. He grieves it quietly, in the way he has learned to grieve things. And then he moves on, because that is the other thing the adventures have taught him. Moving on is not the same as being okay, but it is the only direction available. Season 4 ends with Morty making a small but significant assertion of autonomy. In the finale, he simply chooses not to get involved in Rick's confrontation with the president. He exercises the right to his own time, now to his own disengagement, in a way that would not have been available to him in Season 1. It is not a dramatic break. It is just a kid deciding that this particular thing is not his to deal with right now. But for Morty, who has spent 4 seasons unable to disengage from Rick's orbit, even when it was actively damaging him, this is enormous. He has developed a boundary. Small, provisional, not fully formed. But a boundary. The beginning of one. Section 7. Heartbreak, Time Gods, and the Courage to Try. Season 5 opens with what feels, at first, like a gift. Rick and Morty are in a damaged spaceship hurtling toward Earth, about to die, and Morty grabs the communication device and calls Jessica. Not Rick. Not his parents. Jessica. He tells her that he has been thinking about her for years, that the timing never worked out, that he is sorry he never said anything sooner. He says it like someone who has decided that if this is the end, then at least one true thing should be said out loud before it is over. And Jessica says she wished he had said something sooner. She asks if she can come over to watch a movie. Morty steers the ship, pulls off a landing that should have been impossible, brings the spaceship home through sheer force of newly activated hope. The universe opened a door at the worst possible moment, and Morty walked through it. And then the episode happens to him. Rick's nemesis Mr. Nimbus arrives, and a dinner that conflicts with Morty's date is immediately established. Rick assigns Morty to go retrieve aged wine from a pocket dimension, a Narnia-style place where time moves thousands of times faster than in the real world. Morty has to wait there repeatedly while centuries pass in the pocket dimension for the wine to age properly. This involves generation after generation of a family called the Whovies experiencing Morty's presence as an event in their mythology, descending through hundreds of years from the original Whovie who encountered a young man waiting for wine, producing warriors who train their entire lives to kill him. Morty kills hundreds of them, across centuries, because he wants to get back to his date. The violence is dark and comedic at once, but underneath it is something real. Morty is capable of sustained, calculated violence in service of something he wants. This is not the Morty who flinched at every consequence in Season 1. Eventually, Jessica ends up pulled into the pocket dimension herself. She gets frozen there, conscious but immobile, experiencing the full subjective span of centuries of time alone with her own thoughts. When she comes back out, she has changed at the level of her fundamental relationship to reality. She tells Morty they should be friends for now. Gently, not meanly, but clearly. This is a kind of loss the show has been circling for years. Morty got as close as he has ever been. They kissed. They were on a date. Jessica said yes, And then the universe, in the specific form of the pocket dimension, turned the person he was trying to be close to into someone he can no longer be close to in the way he wanted. Odd. Not because she stopped caring about him, but because what happened to her changed what she needs in a way that does not include this particular version of this particular moment. He does not collapse. He sits with it. He has become very good at sitting with things. A Rick convenient Mort gives him something real and sweet and then takes it away in a different way. He falls for Planetina, an environmental superhero who is kind and genuine and who sees something in Morty that she values. Their romance is written with a gentleness that stands out in a show not always gentle with its romantic storylines. She asks him to come away with her, but Planetina kills her caretakers in a moment of extreme violence, and Beth and Jerry forbid the relationship, and Morty is forced to break up with her in his bedroom while crying in a way that is entirely unperformed and genuinely heartbreaking. But he cries the way a 14-year-old cries, without any of the composure that years of adventure have taught him to wear in dangerous situations. In his bedroom, with Planetina, he is still just a kid losing something he wanted. The Season 5 finale, Rick Morty Jack, changes everything, and it does so by delivering the central finite curve revelation that reframes every adventure that came before it. The accessible multiverse that Rick and Morty have been operating in is not the full multiverse. It is a subset, a carefully constructed portion of infinite reality that was engineered long ago specifically to guarantee that Rick Sanchez is always the smartest being in every dimension within it. The central finite curve is the wall around the section of the multiverse where Rick always wins, where the cosmic dice are loaded in his favor, but where reality itself has been arranged to make Rick dominant. Every adventure Morty has been on, every alien civilization they have visited, every dimension they have traveled through, every version of himself he has met or fought or fled, has existed within this engineered portion of reality. He has not been seeing the real multiverse. He has been seeing Rick's curated collection of it, the part where the game is rigged before it starts. Evil Morty breaks through this wall. He destroys the Citadel, uses its technology to punch a hole in the boundary, and escapes to the wider reality where Rick is not automatically the most important person in the universe. And he offers Morty the chance to come with him. Rick himself tells Morty it is probably the better deal. Morty says no. He stays. He chooses Rick. Not because he does not understand what he is choosing, not because he has not seen clearly what choosing Rick has cost him across 5 seasons. He chooses Rick because the relationship is real to him. Whatever its origins, whatever its compromises, it is the most defining relationship of his life. He is not naive about this anymore. He is not following Rick through portals because he is a kid who does not know better. He is choosing Rick as a full, aware, adult-approaching choice, by someone who knows exactly what he is getting and is getting it anyway. Section 8. The Truth Reshapes Everything. The Revelations of Seasons 5 through 6. The Season 6 premiere, Solarix, delivers the revelation that rewrites the show's foundation. As Rick's attempt to reset the portal system sends all portal travelers back to their original dimensions. Morty goes back to the Prime Dimension, the Cronenberged Earth, the world he destroyed, his original world. Jerry is there, one of the few survivors, barely functional. Beth is dead. Summer is dead. The original family that Morty left behind when the love potion went wrong has been slowly, finally, completely destroyed by the world Morty made unlivable and walked away from. This is the accounting. This is the final bill for the love potion disaster arriving years after the event. The family he was born to is gone. But what Rick tells him after this is worse, in a different way. Rick C-137, the Rick who has been his grandfather for all these years, is not Morty's biological grandfather. He never was. Morty's biological grandfather was Rick Prime, a different Rick who belonged to the Prime Dimension. Rick C-137 came to the Prime Dimension on purpose. He was hunting Rick Prime, who killed his own wife and daughter. He installed himself in the Prime Smith family as a stakeout operation, living with them and waiting for Rick Prime to return. Morty was Rick C-137's waiting room. He was the strategic position, the bait in a long-term trap. Not a family member, not someone chosen for who he was, but someone positioned for where he lived. This lands differently than anything else the show has done to Morty. The loss of his original family hurts. The physical danger of the adventures has scarred him. But this revelation, that the most important relationship of his life was entered under false pretenses, that Rick chose him as a geographic convenience rather than as a person, is the kind of thing that could break someone who is not as experienced in absorbing damage as Morty has become. And yet, Rick kept staying. Rick kept choosing to be there. Rick, who had every ability to leave and did not leave, who kept showing up even when the original strategic reason became moot. The relationship that started as a waiting room became something real. Whether Rick is fully able to articulate it or not, it became something that looks a lot like what love looks like when someone who is very bad at love tries very hard. Morty tells Rick in the episodes that follow that he considers Rick his actual grandfather. Not Rick Prime. This Rick. The one who stayed. The one who is here. And watching Rick receive this, while watching him not quite know what to do with it, but clearly feeling it, is one of the most genuinely moving things the whole show has produced. These two broken people have built something real in the space where something false was supposed to be. And Morty, who has lost almost everything else, is choosing to claim that. Choosing it explicitly, with full knowledge of its origins, with all the information available. He is not being innocent. He is being brave. Section 9. The Final Hunt. Season 7 and What Comes After Revenge. Season 7 builds toward the culmination of the Rick Prime storyline. The payoff comes in Episode 5, Unmortrican, which gives us Evil Morty's full origin story for the first time. And it is not what most people expected. Evil Morty was, before he became Evil Morty, a completely ordinary Morty. He was taken on adventures. He was used as a cloaking device. He was treated as secondary, as a sidekick, as the brainwave pattern that made his Rick's genius invisible rather than as a person with his own worth and trajectory. He was, in every respect that mattered, exactly like our Morty. The difference is what he did when he reached his breaking point. He did not develop resilience. He did not find a way to love his Rick that coexisted with clarity about Rick's damage. He got his Rick blackout drunk, implanted a control device in Rick's brain, and took over. He became the one with the portal gun. He became the one in charge. He took what had been done to him, used as a tool, treated as secondary, and he made that dynamic go in the other direction. This origin matters enormously because the split between Morty and evil, Morty is not a split between a good person and an evil one. It is a split between two possible responses to the same experiences. Same adventures, same damage, same relationship. One Morty decided that love was worth the cost. One Morty decided the cost was too high. In Unmortrican, Evil Morty helps Rick and our Morty against Rick Prime, not out of loyalty or affection, but because Rick Prime possessed an Omega device capable of eliminating every Morty variant across the multiverse. He helps because it serves his interest. At the end, he leaves again, back to the outside of the curve, having taken what he needed, acknowledging no emotional weight in the situation. Our Morty hugs Rick after Rick Prime is killed. Rick has been hunting this man for years. Lad has organized entire sections of his life around this pursuit. And now it is over. Rick Prime is dead, and Rick is left holding the outcome he has been working toward for decades, and he does not know what to do next. Morty's hug, wordless and offered without any demand for it to be received in a particular way, is the most eloquent thing he could possibly do in this moment. He is not fixing anything. He is just being there, present with the grief rather than trying to redirect it. This is the completion of something. The Morty of Season 1 would have followed Rick through a portal and looked for the next adventure. But this Morty understands that there are moments when being alive means being completely still with another person, and not needing the moment to resolve into anything useful. Fear No Mort, the Season 7 finale, takes Rick and Morty to a place called the Fear Hole that feeds on whatever you are most afraid of. And what Morty's fear turns out to be is not death, not pain, not another catastrophic adventure. It is Rick. Not Rick as a threat, Rick as a question. He is afraid that none of it was real, that Rick's care for him was always strategic, that he is still just the bait, even now. He finds his way through not by proving that Rick loves him. He cannot prove that. He finds his way through by deciding that even if the worst version of the fear is true, he still chooses it. He chooses Rick. He chooses the relationship. Not because it is safe or guaranteed or fully understood, but because it is his. It is the most defining thing about him. The person he is in the context of this relationship is worth choosing to be. Section 10. Season 8 and the Morty who has his own center. Season 8 of Rick and Morty arrives in May 2025, with the Rick Prime story resolved and the show genuinely free to go wherever it wants next. What remains is the relationship itself, the two characters, and the question of what they are building in the absence of the overarching vendetta that shaped recent seasons. The premiere, The Summer of All Fears, takes an angle on Morty that is both unexpected and completely earned. Rick traps Morty and Summer inside a simulation where 17 years pass in compressed time. Morty lives a full life mentally within the simulation. He ages through experiences he compresses into episodes worth of living. He becomes a man within the simulation. A jaded, experienced, scarred man. And what this compressed man does, when he finally understands the full shape of the trap, is build something from scratch with his own intelligence. He builds a device that would, if used correctly, cause a nuclear meltdown. As leverage. As a way of turning the tables on Rick in the way Rick has been turning tables on him for years. And it works. Not the nuclear part. Summer stops that. But the principle works. The device works. Morty, with 17 years of compressed suffering and expertise, outsmarted Rick using original invention. Rick knows this. He recognizes it. And it shifts something in the dynamic, quietly and permanently. Not a reversal, not Morty in charge now, but an acknowledgement that the person Rick has been adventuring with all these years has built into someone who can operate within Rick's world as something approaching an equal. And Season 8 continues to build on this through its subsequent episodes. Morty is less reactive. He makes deliberate choices rather than having choices happen to him. He pushes back with the specific confidence of someone who has earned his perspective through experience. He still loves Rick. He still chooses the relationship. But he chooses it now from a position that has some solidity to it. From a center that is recognizably his own, built over years of having no center at all. This is the endpoint, at least so far, of the journey. Not finished, not resolved, but more solid than where he started. He started as someone things happen to. He is now someone who happens to things. Not in Rick's way, but in his own way, with his own combination of empathy and stubbornness and the capacity to care about things even when caring costs him. Section 11. Evil Morty. The mirror, the alternative, the limit. Evil Morty is not just a villain. He is the most revealing possible reflection of our Morty's journey, and he deserves extended treatment in this context. He first appears in close Rick counters of the Rick kind at the end of Season 1. The episode presents him as a victim, one Morty among many who have been kidnapped and imprisoned. He is in the crowd. He looks like the others. He looks scared and helpless in the way Mortis looks scared and helpless by default. And then the reveal comes, and everything reorders. He has been the one running the operation all along. He has a Rick under his control. He has been operating at a level of strategic sophistication that none of the Ricks who were supposed to be the smartest people in the room even suspected was possible. He returns in the Rick-Lantis mix-up as Candidate Morty, campaigning for the presidency of the Citadel of Ricks. And the campaign he runs is politically brilliant in the way that political brilliance is frightening when you understand it. He speaks to the Morty population's real grievances. The inequality is real. The exploitation is real. The system really is designed to keep Mortys secondary and expendable. He is not lying to them. He is telling them the truth. And the truth happens to serve his long-term agenda, but that does not make the truth less true. He wins. He becomes president. He finds the shadow council of Ricks who have been running things from behind the scenes and has them killed. He consolidates power over the most powerful interdimensional institution in the accessible multiverse. And he does all of this without any apparent satisfaction or pleasure. He is not enjoying the power. He is using it. His endgame, revealed in Rick Jack, is the central finite curve. He wants out. He wants to reach the portion of the multiverse that Rick did not build specifically to advantage Rick. And to do this, he uses the Citadel itself as a power source, which means destroying it. Which means thousands of Ricks and Mortys die in the process. He does not flinch. He gets into his ship saw and flies through the gap in reality he created. And he leaves. What makes this so important for understanding our Morty is the fundamental fork in their shared story. Evil Morty was hurt the same way our Morty was hurt. Used the same way. Treated as secondary the same way. The experiences that produced Evil Morty's ruthlessness are the same experiences that have been shaping our Morty all along. The difference is entirely in how each Morty decided to respond. Our Morty responded with attachment, with love, with the decision, made again and again at every breaking point, to stay in the relationship rather than to instrumentalize it. Evil Morty responded by deciding that the relationship was always an instrument, that his intelligence and capability were for his own use, that the pain he had been through was not an invitation to vulnerability, but rather a resource to be refined into purpose. There is a version of this story in which Evil Morty is the protagonist. He broke a system that was genuinely unjust. He reached a part of reality that no one else has reached. He won, by almost any objective measure. But the show places us with our Morty, the one who hugged Rick instead. And by placing us there, it is making an argument about which of these responses to shared suffering is the one worth following. Not the one that leads to escape from the system, but the one that keeps choosing to be in relationship with people, even broken, imperfect, sometimes dangerous people. Because the alternative to that, the fully autonomous self that needs nothing from anyone, turns out to be its own kind of imprisonment. Evil Morty, in his space mansion beyond the curve, is free. He is also completely alone. And he seems fine with that, which is, the show suggests, the most telling thing about him. Section 12. The Heart of the Universe. What Morty means and why it matters. We have been through a lot of ground together. Seasons and seasons of adventures and catastrophes and revelations and growth and damage and choice. And now I want to spend the last section of this breakdown on what all of it adds up to, on what Morty Smith actually means as a character, and why the specific journey he is on says something worth hearing about the world we actually live in. Rick and Morty is, on its surface, a show deeply in love with nihilism. Rick articulates this worldview constantly and eloquently. The universe is vast and indifferent. Everything ends. Love is a chemical reaction. Meaning is a story you tell yourself because the alternative is too uncomfortable. Rick builds this argument with the force of someone who has seen enough of the cosmos to feel certain. He has visited infinite dimensions. He has watched civilizations rise and fall. He understands the scale of things in a way that makes human-sized concerns feel ridiculous. And the show, at its most nihilistic, seems to agree with him. Bad things happen to good people. Good intentions cause disasters. Nothing resolves neatly. Nothing is safe. And then there is Morty. Morty has seen the same scale of things Rick has seen, or close enough. He has visited infinite versions of himself. He has watched worlds be destroyed. He knows, empirically, that he is one of countless Mortys in an uncountable multiverse, that his particular existence has no special cosmic priority. He knows all of this, and he still cries over Planetina. He still calls Jessica. He still hugs Rick after Rick Prime's death. He still shows up. This is the show's quiet, persistent counterargument to itself. Which Rick's nihilism is intellectually defensible and emotionally crippling. It produces an extraordinarily capable and profoundly isolated man who has to torture himself with a recording of his dead wife's voice just to maintain the ability to feel anything at all. Rick built a life philosophy designed to eliminate the possibility of being wounded. And the wound he could never close was still there, sitting in his lab, playing on a loop. Morty's anxiety, his tender-heartedness, his stubborn insistence on caring about things the scale of the universe makes cosmically trivial, is not stupidity. It is not failure to understand the stakes. It is a conscious, maintained choice to be the kind of being who responds to the universe with care rather than with distance. And the show makes the case, slowly and without fanfare. That this choice is harder than Rick's. It is easy to be nihilistic. It is intellectually defensible and emotionally efficient, and it insulates you from a large category of pain. What is not easy is to be Morty, to keep showing up for people who let you down, to keep feeling things in a context that punishes feeling, to keep choosing love when love is the most efficient delivery system for loss that has ever existed. Morty's journey across these seasons is not a journey from weakness to strength in any conventional sense. He does not become powerful. He does not become fearless. He does not stop being anxious or uncertain or capable of being deeply hurt by ordinary human things. What he becomes is more deliberately himself, more consciously, actively, as intentionally the person who cares about things in a universe that does not require him to care. He has earned the choice. He has seen all the options. He knows exactly what caring costs, and he keeps paying it. There is a version of Morty's story that ends in collapse. You can see it in every erased memory, in every season where he absorbs more than not anyone should have to absorb without an adequate way to process it. You can see it in Evil Morty, who took the same starting material and built something unrecognizable from it. You can see it in the toxic Morty, separated in the alien spa, small and scared, and convinced of his own worthlessness. The collapse was always available. The narrative was never constructed to guarantee he would not collapse. He did not collapse. He is still here, still choosing, still feeling things, and still reaching out for the people and the moments that matter to him, even when the reaching fails. Consider for a moment the cumulative weight of what this kid has absorbed across 8 seasons. He destroyed his original Earth because he asked Rick for a love potion. He buried his own dead body in a stranger's backyard. He erased hundreds of traumatic memories that he was too overwhelmed to carry. He killed a sentient being who trusted him. He lost version after version of the people he loved. He discovered that his grandfather is not actually his grandfather. He discovered that his biological grandfather is dead. He discovered that the entire multiverse he has been exploring was rigged by Rick to serve Rick's interest. He lost Jessica to time god consciousness. He lost Planetina to violence he did not see coming. He has been used, lied to, exploited, endangered, and occasionally abandoned. And he is still there. Still choosing to be there, still hugging Rick at the end of a season instead of walking out the door. That is not naivety. That is not Stockholm Syndrome, though people who do not look closely enough sometimes mistake it for that. That is a person who has examined all available options with full information and has decided that the relationship is worth it. That the love, imperfect and expensive and built on a foundation that turned out to be strategically motivated, is real enough and good enough to sustain. That a life with Rick, as complicated and damaging as it is, contains things that a life without Rick does not. What those things are, the show is honest that they are hard to name. They are not safety, they are not stability. They are not peace in any conventional sense. They are something more like the specific texture of being known in a way that no one else could know you, because no one else has been through what you have been through together. The shared survival of impossible things. The specific intimacy that comes from having been in the dark together and come back out. There is something else about Morty that I want to name explicitly because I think it often gets lost in analysis that focuses on his arc as a kind of damage narrative. Morty is genuinely brave. Not in the obvious action hero way, though the show does give him plenty of moments of that kind of bravery too, but in the deeper, harder way. He keeps choosing a relationship that costs him constantly. He keeps choosing to feel things in a context that constantly punishes feeling. And he keeps choosing the human option, the empathetic option, the option that leaves him most exposed to loss, even as that option keeps delivering exactly what it promises. Philosophy. In a show about the terrifying indifference of an infinite universe, in a world where everything is replaceable and nothing is guaranteed, and even your grandfather might turn out to have chosen you for reasons that had nothing to do with you. The choice to remain open to experience rather than to close against it is genuinely radical. Not heroic in the action movie sense, but heroic in the truer, quieter sense of doing something that costs you and doing it anyway because it is the right way to live. Rick is the smartest person in the central finite curve. In all the dimensions where the game is rigged to put him on top, he can build anything. He can escape anything. He can outthink everyone. And Morty, who cannot build a portal gun and cannot escape anything, and gets outsmarted constantly, is the one who knows how to be with another person, knows how to sit with their grief, knows how to offer presence in the moment that needs presence rather than a solution, knows how to choose someone, again and again, fully knowing the price of the choice. The universe is cold, but people do not have to be. The show knows this is a small argument against the scale of the cosmos. It makes the argument anyway. It makes it through Morty, episode after episode, season after season, one choice at a time. That is everything the show is saying, and it says it through the most ordinary, extraordinary person it could find. A 14-year-old boy in a yellow shirt who follows his grandfather through a portal at the beginning of an impossible story. He always follows. And now, finally, after everything, he follows because he chooses to. That is the whole story. That is Morty. That is Morty's entire story explained, from the very first portal in 2013 all the way through Season 8 and everything in between. If you made it to the end of this one, genuinely thank you. That was a long one because Morty's story deserves the length. He has been carrying a lot. He deserved to have it laid out clearly, all of it, the weight and the tenderness and the damage and the choice. If this video resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationship with this show differently, please drop a like. And it genuinely makes a difference to how many people these videos reach. And I make them for the people who want to think about this stuff as much as I do. And if you want to be here for the next one, subscribe. It is free and it means you will not miss whatever we dig into next. There are a lot more characters and moments and stories in this universe that deserve this kind of attention and care. Take care of yourselves. The universe is cold, but you do not have to be. Script by Q Pickle Rick. Rick and Morty. Deep Dives Extended Analysis. What the adventures actually did to Morty's brain. A season-by-season psychological portrait. I want to go back through the arc one more time from a different angle. Not the plot, the internal landscape. But because one of the things that makes Morty's story so extraordinary to track is that if you pay close attention, you can watch the exact changes happening in real time, episode by episode, across the seasons. The shifts are not always announced. They are not always presented as pivotal moments. Sometimes the most significant change in Morty happens in a background detail, in the way he reacts to something in episode 3 of a season, and you only recognize its significance when you get to episode 9 and you realize he would have reacted completely differently 2 years ago. Let us do this carefully. In Season 1, the defining emotional characteristic of Morty Smith is reactive anxiety. Everything that happens to him is filtered through fear first. When Rick says they are going somewhere, Morty asks if it is safe. Yet when Rick says they need to do something, Morty asks if they have to. He is not passive in a resigned way. He is actively, vocally, consistently expressing his discomfort. He stammers. He repeats himself. His voice goes up when he is scared, which is constantly. He is the emotional seismograph of every adventure, registering every tremor as it comes. This is important because it is the first layer of who Morty is. The anxiety is not a flaw added to a neutral character. It is the expression of a genuine orientation toward experience. Morty finds the universe threatening because the universe is threatening. He is not wrong about this. Rick is the outlier, the person so supremely capable that the threats do not land on him the way they would on anyone normal. Morty is accurate. His anxiety is accurate. The universe is dangerous. But the adventures are terrifying. His nervous system is giving him precisely the correct information. The problem, and the show understands this with uncomfortable precision, is that accurate information about danger does not protect you from danger. When the person making the decisions about whether you encounter that danger is someone for whom danger is simply the background noise of existence. So what happens to a person who is in a constant state of accurate threat response for years? By the end of Season 1, something has started to shift. It is subtle enough that you might miss it if you are watching the show at a surface level. Morty still expresses anxiety. He still stammers and protests and asks if they can please go home. But the anxiety has begun to develop a quality it did not have at the start. It is becoming performative in a way it was not at the beginning. Not entirely. There are still genuine moments of terror. But occasionally, just occasionally, the anxious protest has the texture of a ritual rather than a genuine expression, a way of participating in the dynamic rather than a true expression of distress. This is not a character flaw, and the show does not present it as one. It is adaptation. It is Morty's nervous system trying to find a sustainable relationship with a level of chronic stress that would break most people in a matter of days. The anxiety starts to become the way he participates in the adventure, the role he plays rather than just the raw, unmediated experience of being a scared kid. Season 2 accelerates this. Morty's anxiety is still there, but his actual behavior is increasingly competent in ways that contradict the anxiety. He handles the timeline fracturing in A Wrinkle in Time with surprising steadiness. He makes the right moral call with Fart and Morty Night Run, even though the call is agonizing. He figures out the parasite mechanism in Total Recall before Rick does. His brain is working, clearly, underneath the anxiety. The anxiety is the costume he is wearing. The person inside the costume is someone who has been quietly developing. But Season 2 also introduces something darker. After Morty Night Run, after the death of Fart, Morty has his first experience of what it feels like to kill something you tried to protect, something you believed was innocent because it turned out to be a threat. This is a specific kind of psychic cost. That it is not just the weight of having done violence. It is the weight of having been wrong about someone you committed to. The moral complexity of a universe that does not reward simple good intentions. Morty handles this with characteristic forward momentum. He processes it the way he processes everything in Season 2, by moving on, by continuing, by not sitting with it long enough to let it settle into something that might require him to reckon with it. This is the beginning of the pattern that Morty's mind-blowers will eventually reveal in full. The experiences are going somewhere, even when Morty does not consciously process them. They are accumulating underneath the surface. By the time we reach Season 3, the accumulation has started to show in Morty's behavior in ways that go beyond simple competence development. In Rick mincing the stone, the violence is too easy for him. Not in a disturbing, sadistic way, but in the way that something becomes easy when you have done it enough times and built enough callus around the part of you that used to flinch at it. He fights with a fluency that Season 1 Morty absolutely did not have, and the show does not celebrate this. It presents it flatly as a thing that has happened, as a cost that has been paid in the currency of something he used to not be capable of. The version of Morty that emerges from Season 3 is functionally more capable in almost every quantifiable way. He can handle weapons, he can defuse bombs, he can navigate the Citadel, he can outthink Rick's drunk constructions. He has developed instincts that are not just survival instincts, but something closer to tactical instincts, and the ability to read a situation and respond to it faster and more effectively than the anxious kid who broke his legs pressing the wrong button would have been able to. But here's the other side of that ledger. The show tracks it carefully. Morty's moral reactions are getting slower. The flinch that used to happen automatically, the thing in Season 1 that made him say, wait, we cannot just do this, that is wrong. That flinch is getting slower. It is not gone. It still shows up. But it has to travel further to reach his conscious behavior now. There are layers of callus between the original moral instinct and the response it would produce. This is one of the show's most honest and least comfortable observations about what sustained exposure to trauma and violence does to people. It does not make you evil. It does not turn you into a sociopath. It puts distance between you and your own moral reflexes. The thing that used to be immediate and automatic becomes considered and delayed. And in that delay, things happen that would not have happened if the reflex had still been immediate. Season 4 is where Morty starts to consciously grapple with this. Not in big philosophical terms, not in conversations with Rick about the nature of morality, but in moments where he notices the distance. The Vat of Acid episode is the clearest example of this. Morty builds a relationship, lives a life, and when it is taken away, his grief is real, but his ability to feel it is somehow muted in ways that alarm him. He knows he should be destroyed. He knows this loss should feel the way the loss of his original dimension felt. When he buried his dead body in a stranger's backyard and had to keep going. But it does not feel exactly like that. It feels like looking at pain through glass. Real, but at a slight remove. He does not name this. He does not say the words, "I am less capable of feeling things than I used to be." But the way he moves through the grief in that episode, the way he keeps trying to find pathways back to the feeling, rather than the feeling being immediately present, suggests that something has shifted in how directly he can access his own emotional experience. Season 5 and beyond is where the reintegration begins. Not a return to Season 1 Morty, which is neither possible nor desirable, but the beginning of a process where Morty starts to bring the capable, experienced, scarred version of himself into dialogue with the tender, caring, genuinely feeling version that has been getting muffled by the accumulation. This is the season where he calls Jessica from a crashing spaceship. The season where he cries over Planetina in his bedroom. The season where he chooses Rick over evil Morty's offer of escape. These are not the actions of someone who has lost access to their own emotional life. They are the actions of someone who has found their way back to it through the specific discipline of choosing it repeatedly, even when it hurts. By seasons 6, 7, and 8, Morty has achieved something that the show frames quietly but unmistakably as a form of wholeness. Not completeness, not the absence of scars, but a genuine integration of the different things he has become. The capable survivor and the caring person. Of the experienced adventurer and the kid who still wants a normal life with someone who loves him, the person who can kill when killing is necessary, and the person who weeps for the things that are lost. These are not contradictions to be resolved. They are the full, complicated texture of a person who has actually lived through something, rather than a character who has been defined by a single consistent trait. This is what genuine character development looks like. Not a straight line from point A to point B, not a redemption arc or a corruption arc. A spiral that keeps returning to the same questions from different altitudes, asking them each time from a vantage point that includes more information and more scar tissue and more capacity for both clarity and feeling than the last time they were asked. Extended analysis. The Jessica problem. Why Morty's romantic life is the show's most important running thread. Across 8 seasons of Rick and Morty, across universe-destroying catastrophes and multiverse-altering revelations, and the death of multiple versions of the people Morty loves, the single most persistent subplot in his life is the question of Jessica. This might seem like a strange claim. There are more dramatically significant threads. The hunt for Rick Prime, the truth about Rick C-137's origins, the central finite curve. Any of these seems to matter more in the cosmic sense than whether a 14-year-old boy ever gets the chance to go on a date with the girl in his math class. But that is exactly why the Jessica thread is so important. Because it is not about Jessica. It never was about Jessica, not primarily. And it is about Morty's relationship to ordinary life, to the things that belong to him, that exist outside Rick's orbit, that are his to want and pursue and lose and grieve in ways that have nothing to do with interdimensional travel or alien enemies or the fate of the multiverse. In Season 1, Jessica is the most concrete symbol of everything the adventures are costing Morty. Every time Rick pulls him through a portal during a school day, it is not just missed time. It is missed time in which Morty could have been sitting near Jessica in math class, could have been working up the courage to say something, could have been building the kind of slow, ordinary proximity that high school relationships are built on. The adventures are not just dangerous to Morty. They are actively competing with the life he wants to be living. Thus, the love potion disaster in Rick Potion number 9 is the ultimate expression of this competition. Morty tries to use Rick's world, Rick's science, Rick's resources to get something he wants in his own life. And it destroys everything. The lesson is clear and brutal. Rick's world does not interface cleanly with ordinary teenage desire. The tools Rick uses are not safe for Morty's purposes. Trying to bridge those two lives produces catastrophe. But Morty does not stop wanting Jessica after the love potion disaster. He does not give up on ordinary life. He just accepts, with the bleak stoicism he has adopted, that he is living in a replacement dimension now and the relationship would have to be rebuilt from scratch, with the replacement Jessica who does not know him and was never part of what happened. Over the subsequent seasons, what the Jessica thread tracks is the specific ways that Morty's growing capability in Rick's world makes the ordinary parts of his life harder rather than easier. By season 4, he can defuse a neutrino bomb. He can navigate the Citadel. He can hold his own in a fight against beings that would disintegrate most adult humans. And he still cannot have a simple conversation with a girl he likes. Not because he has become less capable in ordinary human terms, but because the gap between what he can do in Rick's world and what he can navigate in his own life has become wider rather than narrower. He has accumulated competencies that are useless for the thing he actually wants. The Vat of Acid episode is a kind of commentary on this from a slightly different angle. Rick gives Morty a tool that lets him undo choices, and Morty, given this power, uses it to build something ordinary. A relationship? A life with a woman he meets in a coffee shop? The thing he most wants to use Rick's technology for, when given the choice, is not adventure or power or survival. It is a normal relationship that develops at a normal pace and leads to a normal life. And the fact that Rick built the device as a lesson about consequences, and is watching Morty use it for this, contains an implicit commentary about the gap between what Rick thinks matters and what Morty actually wants. The Mort Dinner Rick Andre moment in Season 5 is the show's fullest treatment of the Jessica thread, and one of its most emotionally precise sequences. Morty confesses his feelings from a crashing spaceship because he is about to die and he wants one true thing said. And Jessica says yes. This is not small. For seasons, the Jessica relationship has been the concrete expression of everything Morty wants that the adventures keep pulling him away from. Her saying yes is the universe, briefly, not pulling him away from it. And then the universe catches up. The dinner, the pocket dimension, the centuries of time. The time god, the gentle but clear no. The door that opened gets closed again. Not because Jessica is cruel, not because Morty did anything wrong, just because the universe has its own indifference to Morty's romantic timeline. The interesting thing about this ending is what Morty does with it. He does not give up on Jessica after this. He does not close the door himself. He accepts her determination that they should be friends for now and continues to be in her life. And in Season 7, and after all the major mythos events have shifted the landscape, she and Morty are shown to be casually dating. Not dramatically, not as a big resolution, but as a quiet, real thing that happened, that is now happening, that belongs to his ordinary life in the way he always wanted something to. The Jessica thread is the show's way of keeping one foot in the world of ordinary human longing, no matter how wild the cosmic adventures get. It is the reminder that underneath all the multiverse-altering stakes, there is a kid who just wants to go on a date. And that kid's desire is not smaller than the cosmic stakes. It is just different. It is the specific, irreplaceable, deeply human kind of wanting that the universe does not provide shortcuts for. Extended analysis. Morty's relationship with violence. The slow and honest reckoning. One of the threads that runs through Morty's story from Season 1 all the way through. The current episodes that rarely gets addressed directly is the evolution of his relationship with violence. And I want to talk about it here with the care it deserves, because the show handles it in a way that is more honest than most discussions of it tend to give it credit for. In Season 1, Morty's relationship with violence is uncomplicated, in the way a person's relationship with something they have never done is always uncomplicated. He does not want to hurt anyone. When he fights off King Jellybean and Meeseeks and Destroy, it is survival, pure and adrenaline-driven, and he is clearly shaken by it afterward. When Rick engages in violence during the adventures, Morty protests, flinches, expresses distress. The violence is something that happens around him and to him, not something he engages with as a participant. Season 2 begins the slow shift. In Morty Night Run, killing Fart is the first time Morty does something that could be called premeditated. He has time. He has the choice. He could not kill Fart and accept the consequences. He makes the decision that killing Fart is the right call, and he executes it. The killing saves lives. It is probably the correct decision. But it is also a crossing of a threshold. He has now done something intentional, something that required a decision rather than a survival reflex. The shift accelerates dramatically in Season 2's Look Who's Purging Now. The Purge Planet episode. When Morty's anger reaches its breaking point over the course of the episode, he does not just defend himself, he goes on a rampage. He enters a kind of flow state of violence that is genuinely disturbing to watch. The show does not frame this as empowering. It frames it as alarming, both to Morty afterward and to Rick, who is startled by the intensity of what comes out of his grandson when the safety mechanism finally breaks. What this episode reveals is something important about where Morty's violence comes from when it emerges. It is not cold. It is not calculated. It is not evil Morty's patient, purposeful application of force toward a specific end. It is pent up. It is everything he has not been saying, everything he has swallowed, everything he has forgiven without fully processing, erupting in a physical form because there was nowhere else for it to go. This is a trauma response. This is what happens when a person who does not have healthy outlets for anger and distress is subjected to years of high-intensity experiences without adequate support. The violence does not come from nowhere. It comes from the accumulated pressure of a childhood spent being dragged through impossible situations and expected to keep smiling about it. The Purge Planet just provided a context where the social prohibition against expressing it was temporarily suspended. Season 3 continues this honestly. In Rickmancing the Stone, Morty fights with a fluency that is genuinely chilling. He is good at it. He is efficient. He channels something into the fighting that the show makes clear is about the divorce, about his parents' relationship falling apart, about the sense of powerlessness that comes from watching your family structure dissolve. He cannot fix his parents' marriage. He cannot control the adventures. He cannot make Rick be different. He can win a fight. He can beat someone. He can exert force in a direction where force produces a result. This is the specific seduction of violence for someone in Morty's situation. In a life where he has very little control over almost anything, physical force is the one domain where agency is immediate and legible. You swing. You make contact. Something changes. There is a clarity to it that nothing else in his life offers. The show knows this and does not excuse it. In Vindicators 3, when Morty navigates Rick's drunk saw traps with calm proficiency, there is a moment where Rick looks at him and the look is complicated. It is partly pride. But it is also something else. Something that looks like recognition of what he has created. By Season 4, Morty kills military personnel in Edge of Tomorty. Rick die Rick Pete with the mechanical efficiency of someone following a GPS. And the show presents this as the Death Crystal's manipulation, which it is. But it is also only possible because Morty has been built into someone capable of it. The Death Crystal needed something to work with. Morty's capacity for violence, developed across 4 seasons of adventures, was the material available. What makes Morty's relationship with violence different from Easy Morty or Evil Morty is the persistence of his moral response to it. Even as he becomes more capable of it, even as he performs it with increasing fluency, he does not stop feeling it. The Toxic Morty episode shows us what Morty looks like without his anxiety and moral weight. He does things without flinching. He does not carry the cost. And that version of Morty is, the show is clear about this, missing something essential. The fact that Morty flinches is not just emotional weakness. It is the evidence that he is paying attention to what he is doing, that the cost is registering, that the impact is landing. By seasons 5 through 8, the violence in Morty's life has taken on a different quality. It is less frequent, more considered, and when it happens in service of something specific rather than erupting from accumulation. He has not purged himself of the capacity for it, but he has begun, in his quiet, methodical way, to integrate it into a fuller picture of who he is, including it in the ledger rather than pretending it is not there. This is, again, the show being honest about what trauma actually looks like in a person over time. Not a redemption arc that erases what happened. Not a corruption arc that concludes in the worst version of the person. A realistic account of the permanent marks that extreme experiences leave, and the work of continuing to be a person despite them. Extended analysis, the meaning of the Morty brainwave. What makes Morty special in a universe full of Mortys? There is a technical element of the show's mythology around Morty that I have not addressed in full depth yet, and I want to spend some time with it because it is actually one of the show's most interesting and most overlooked philosophical moves. Ricks use Mortis as cloaking devices. The brainwaves of a Morty, sometimes described as dumb waves or Morty waves, cancel out the brain waves of a Rick, making a Rick much harder to detect by the various surveillance systems and enemies that would love to track him. This is the practical, transactional reason that Ricks keep Mortys close. Not love, not family. Brainwave compatibility. The show introduces this early and presents it as straightforwardly exploitative, which it is. Rick uses Morty as cover. Morty's presence allows Rick to move through the universe without being detected. Without Morty, Rick is a bright beacon of genius-level intelligence, visible to anyone looking for that signature. With Morty, he is noise. But here's what is interesting about this when you think about it carefully. The reason Morty's brainwaves work as cover is because they are, out in the technical sense of the show's universe, the opposite of Rick's. Rick's brainwaves are the signature of genius. Morty's are the signature of something the show diplomatically calls average, but which functions in the narrative as ordinary, human, unexceptional. Morty is, in the show's own terms, not intelligent in the way Rick defines intelligence. And yet the show keeps showing us that Morty has something Rick does not. The total Rick-all solution. The way he handles fart. The way he can read people and situations in real time. The way his emotional intelligence serves as a better map of human reality than Rick's extraordinary analytical intelligence in the moments when what matters is human reality rather than cosmic mechanics. The brainwave thing is really a metaphor. Morty's ordinariness, his humanity, his anxiety and tenderness and moral messiness is not a deficiency he carries around in the shadow of Rick's genius. It is a different kind of signal. One that is, in specific context and for specific purposes, exactly what is needed. Rick cannot do what Morty does. Not because Rick is not smart enough, but because what Morty does is not a function of intelligence in the way Rick understands intelligence. It is a function of being made of the specific, ordinary, feeling human material that Rick has spent decades trying to fortify himself against. Morty is the Mortiest Morty, as Rick says. The most representative, the most authentic expression of Mortiness. In a multiverse full of Mortys who have been shaped by their Ricks into various degrees of compliance and suppression, us the Morty who has been shaped by the Mortiest Rick into a kind of dynamic, fully realized, continuously choosing personhood, is, paradoxically, the one who holds on to the core of what Mortiness actually is most completely. What is Mortiness at its core? It is the willingness to feel the weight of what is happening, to let experience land, to have a moral response to your own actions and the actions of the people around you. To want ordinary things with a genuine and specific longing. To love imperfectly and persistently and without the kind of strategic distance that Rick uses as armor. To keep caring about things even when caring about things makes you the most vulnerable person in any given room. In the show's final accounting, that is what Morty is. Not a sidekick, not a cloaking device. Well, not the anxious kid who follows Rick around hoping to survive. The person who keeps proving, by the specific texture of his living, that the universe's indifference to human feeling does not actually obligate human beings to become indifferent to their own. He is the counter-argument the universe did not ask for and does not require. He makes it anyway. And that is, as it turns out, everything. Script complete. Cue Pickle Rick, Rick and Morty. Deep Dive's extended analysis, the Smith family as Morty's emotional foundation. What home means. When home keeps changing. One dimension of Morty's story that deserves its own dedicated space is the question of what home means for him and how that meaning shifts across the seasons in ways that parallel and complicate everything else happening to him. For most people, home is a stable concept. It is the place you come back to, the constant against which the chaos of the world is measured. You go out, things happen, you come home, and home is the same. The continuity of home is part of what makes it home. The reliability of the people there, the specific smell of the rooms, the way the light comes through the kitchen window at a certain time in the morning. Home is the sum of all the small, consistent things that mean you belong somewhere. For Morty Smith, this concept is broken in the first season and never fully repaired. The Cronenberg disaster does not just cost Morty his world. It cost him the concept of home as reliable. After Rick Potion number 9, there is no place that is simply where Morty belongs. He lives in a house that looks like his house, but is not his house. Yet he lives with people who look like his family, but are replacements for the original people who are still out there somewhere, surviving in a horror show that Morty created and walked away from. The house he sleeps in is technically identical to the one he grew up in, but it is not his. And some part of him always knows this. This is not a small thing. Psychologically, the experience of having a stable home environment is one of the foundational requirements for healthy development. It is what allows children to take the risks of growth and exploration. You can go out and try things and fail and be scared because there is a place to come back to that will be there when you return. Morty lost this at some point before the pilot, probably with Rick's initial arrival in the house. And the Cronenberg disaster finished the job. That he does not have a home in the foundational sense anymore. He has a simulation of a home, a place that performs all the functions of a home without actually being his. Watch how this shows up in his behavior across the seasons. In Season 1, Morty's protests to go home are genuine and specific. He wants his home. He wants the specific home he knows. By Season 2, the protests have changed texture. They are still there, but they are vaguer, less specific. He does not want his home so much as he wants safety, stability, something that is not the current dangerous situation. By Season 3, he barely asks to go home at all. Not because he has found peace with the adventures, but because the concept has eroded to the point where it does not function as the anchor it used to, while the family structure that surrounds him is also shifting across the seasons. Jerry and Beth's marriage deteriorates through Seasons 2 and 3, with the full collapse happening in the Season 3 premiere. And Morty's relationship with the stability of the family unit is complicated by the knowledge that this particular family, the one he lives with, is not his original family. His original family is in the Cronenberg dimension. His replacement family is built on a lie he can never fully acknowledge without destroying the fiction that keeps them functional. This gives Morty a specific loneliness that is different from the loneliness produced by the adventures. The adventure loneliness is acute and intermittent. The home loneliness is chronic and ambient. He is surrounded by people who love him and who he loves back. And he still cannot fully belong to them because he knows, in a way they do not, that they are the second draft. Season 6 and the Solarix revelation bring this full circle in a devastating way. When Morty returns to the Prime Dimension and finds his original family destroyed, he is not just learning what happened to the people he left behind. He is learning that the original home he has been quietly mourning all along is truly, finally, irretrievably gone. There is no going back. The Cronenberg dimension has finished what the Love Potion disaster started. His original family does not exist anymore. What he has now, the replacement dimension with the replacement family, is all there is. And here's the thing the show does with this that is worth examining carefully. Morty does not fall apart when he finds out. He grieves. He sits with it, but he does not collapse. And one of the reasons he does not collapse is that, over the years, the replacement family has become real in a way that the framing of replacement does not quite capture. Summer from the replacement dimension has been through things with him. Beth from the replacement dimension has been present in ways that his original Beth may or may not have been. Jerry from the replacement dimension is still exasperatingly Jerry. The family he has been pretending is his has, in the ways that matter for daily life, become his. Not because the pretense was true, but because time and shared experience and love, even imperfect and displaced love, have a kind of alchemy that makes real things out of contingent ones. This is one of the show's quietest and most profound arguments. That home is not the place you were born. It is not the people you originally belonged to. Home is the accumulation of everything you have been through with the people who were there when it happened. Home is built, not found. And Morty, who started the show having lost his original home and never having found a replacement that felt fully real, has spent 8 seasons building one, piece by piece, in the only way available to him. It is not a perfect home. It never was and never will be. Rick lives in the garage, Beth has her daddy issues. Jerry is Jerry. Summer has her own accumulation of damage from growing up in this household. The family is messy and complicated and does not always treat each other well. But it is real. It is Morty's. And knowing that it is real, choosing to claim it with full knowledge of its origins and its imperfections, is one of the bravest things he has ever done. Extended analysis. Rick's specific damage to Morty and the question of whether it was worth it. I want to spend some time with the question that the show circles without ever fully answering. The question of whether what Rick did to Morty was net positive or net negative. Not in an abstract philosophical sense, but in the specific, concrete sense of looking at who Morty is now versus who he might have been if Rick had never shown up in that garage. This is a question the show takes seriously. It is not rhetorical. There is a real, non-trivial case to be made that Rick's presence in Morty's life has been catastrophic. Let us make that case first because it deserves to be made clearly. Without Rick, Morty probably grows up and muddles through high school. He probably struggles socially for a while and then finds his footing in the way most socially awkward teenagers eventually do. He probably stays in touch with the original dimensions of his family. His parents probably stay together or separate in a less chaotic way, or stay together for longer. He does not have hundreds of traumatic memories extracted from his brain because there was nothing traumatic enough to need extraction. He does not bury his own dead body in a stranger's backyard at 14. He does not develop the capacity for casual violence that shows up in Rickmancing the Stone and Edge of Tomorty. He does not discover that his grandfather is not his grandfather. He does not lose his original family to the consequences of a love potion gone wrong. And he also does not meet Bird Person, does not have the experience of being the person Rick cares about most in the universe, even if Rick expresses that care through destruction as much as through tenderness. Does not develop the moral sophistication that comes from actually navigating situations where the moral options are genuinely unclear. Does not develop the empathetic intelligence that solves the parasite crisis while Rick is still running analytics. Does not become someone capable of standing in the fear hole and choosing the relationship with full knowledge of its costs. The question is not whether Rick hurt Morty. He did, considerably. The question is whether the version of Morty who exists now, shaped by everything Rick put him through, is a more realized person than the version who would have existed without it. And the show's answer, delivered across 8 seasons without ever stating it directly, is that this is not the right question. The right question is not whether Morty is better or worse for having Rick in his life. It is whether the self he built in response to having Rick in his life is authentically his. Whether the person he has become, with all the damage and the capability and the specific form of wisdom that comes from having been through the specific things he has been through, is someone he can claim. Someone he can recognize as himself and choose to continue being. The answer, the show tells us in the fear hole and in the hug after Rick Prime's death, and in the invention Morty builds during the Season 8 simulation, is yes. Morty has become someone he can claim. Well, not because the path that produced him was good or healthy or something he would choose if given the chance to do it differently, but because the person who arrived at the end of that path is real, is fully inhabited, is capable of love and grief and choice and invention, is, in the specific and irreplaceable way that matters most, himself. This is not a justification of what Rick did. The show does not ask you to justify it. It asks you to notice that the outcome of something harmful can still be a person worth being, and that this is true even when the harm was genuinely harm and not a gift in disguise. Morty did not need to be hurt to become who he is. He needed to respond to being hurt in the way he responded, which was by continuing to choose care and love and presence even when those choices cost him. The hurt was not necessary. The choice was. And the choice was always Morty's. Extended analysis, the show's use of repetition, why Morty's story keeps circling the same questions. One of the formal choices Rick and Morty makes that becomes very clear when you watch Morty's arc across all 8 seasons is the use of repetition as a structural tool. The same questions appear again and again. The same emotional beats return, in new contexts, asking to be answered differently each time. How much of this is Rick? How much of this is me? Is this relationship worth what it costs? What do I want from my ordinary life? What does love look like when it cannot be simple? These questions appear in Season 1 and they appear in Season 8. The show does not resolve them in season 1 and consider them closed. It circles back to them, each time with more information, each time from a higher vantage point, each time asking Morty to answer them with everything he has learned since the last time they were asked. This circularity is sometimes mistaken for the show spinning its wheels or avoiding resolution, but that is a misreading of what the repetition is doing. The questions do not repeat because the show does not know the answers. They repeat because the answers are not the kind that can be given once and held forever. They have to be given again, in new circumstances, with new costs, by a person who has changed enough from the last time that the same question requires a genuinely different kind of engagement. The question of whether the relationship with Rick is worth it is not the same question in Season 1, asked by a 14-year-old who has been on his first adventure, as it is in Season 5, and asked by someone who has buried his own dead body and erased hundreds of traumatic memories and killed a sentient being and lost a dimension and a relationship and a mother figure and a grandfather figure who was not his grandfather all along. The question looks the same. It is not the same. And the answer Morty gives in Season 5, choosing Rick over evil Morty's offer, is not the same answer he would have given in Season 1, even if the behavior looks similar. It is the same choice made with incomparably more information and therefore meaning something incomparably more. This is why Morty's story requires all 8 seasons to tell properly. Not because the story is so complicated that it takes that long to explain, but because the questions at the heart of it are the kind that can only be answered by living through them, repeatedly, by at increasing depth, until the answers are not opinions but experiences, until they are not things Morty thinks but things Morty is. That is the work the show has been doing with this character since December 2013. It is patient work. It is work that trusts the audience to notice the repetition and understand what it is doing. And when you watch it all the way through, when you see Morty answer the same questions in Season 8 that he first encountered in Season 1, you can see what 13 years of living and choosing and losing and staying has done to the quality of the answers. They are the same words. They are not the same thing. That is Morty's entire story. That is what it means to grow up inside an impossible situation and come out the other side still recognizably, unbreakably, irreducibly yourself.